Okay, so are you curious about this whole dogs at work thing? You've probably seen the articles, heard people talking about it, maybe even listened to a podcast or two.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, is it really all it's cracked up to be? Like, is it just a cute perk? Or can it actually make a difference in the workplace?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's actually a lot to unpack there.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. The trend of pet-friendly offices. We're going to look at the research, the pros and cons, the whole 9 yards.
And we're going to help you figure out if those furry coworkers are the real deal or just a recipe for adorable chaos.
Exactly. So we've been doing some digging and we found some really interesting stuff.
We've got article studies, even a fascinating podcast episode that really digs into this whole thing.
Yeah, that podcast was full of great insights. One thing that really stood out to me was just how widespread this whole pet-friendly office thing has become.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just some fringe trend anymore.
Right. We're talking big-name companies, Google, Amazon, even some more traditional companies are jumping on board.
And I think that says a lot about how workplaces are evolving.
It really does. It's like companies are finally realizing that happy employees are productive employees.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of employee well-being comes in. It's not just about ping pong tables and free snacks anymore.
Right. It's about creating an environment where people feel valued and supported.
And hey, if that means bringing your furry friend to work, why not?
Exactly. Speaking of furry friends, that podcast we mentioned had some really interesting points about how dogs can actually reduce stress levels. I mean, we all know that feeling of calmness after a good cuddle with our dog, but they actually dug into the science behind it.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
So is there actual science behind this? Like, what's going on in our brains when we're hanging out with Fido that makes us feel all warm and fuzzy?
Okay, so get this. When you pet a dog, your brain releases a hormone called oxytocin.
Oxytocin?
Yep. And this little hormone is like magic. It lowers cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It boosts feelings of trust and bonding, and it even makes us more empathetic.
Wow, so it's like dogs are little empathy ninjas.
Basically.
Yeah.
And all those things, those are good for the workplace, right?
Absolutely. Less stress, more trust, better communication. Sign me up.
Right. And it's not just about like our own personal stress levels, right? The podcast also talked about how dogs can actually change the whole social scene at work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like they can make it more collaborative and less, well, uptight.
Definitely. It's like dogs have this way of breaking down barriers between people.
Totally. They even called dogs social catalysts in the podcast.
Social catalysts. I like that.
Right. It sounds fancy, but it makes sense. Think about it. You're in the break room grabbing coffee and you see someone with a cute dog.
And suddenly you're not just random coworker, you're the person with the adorable pup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And bam, just like that, you're chatting and connecting with someone you might not have even talked to otherwise.
It's like dogs are the ultimate icebreaker.
They really are. And those little interactions, those quick chats about your dog's latest antics, they can actually be really valuable for team building. Oh, totally. It creates a much more positive and friendly vibe.
Right. It's like the opposite of those awkward silences in the elevator. Dogs just have this way of bringing people together.
They really do.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
The podcast also suggested that pet-friendly offices could actually lead to higher productivity.
Really? I'm intrigued. What was their thinking on that?
Well, at first I was a little skeptical too. Like, I love my dog, but I'm not sure how having him snoozing under my desk is going to magically make me better at my job.
Haha, right. I get that. It's not like dogs are going to start typing up your reports for you.
Exactly.
But I think it goes back to this idea of creating a more comfortable and relaxed work environment.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
When people feel more at ease, they're naturally going to be more focused and productive.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess those quick dog walking breaks throughout the day, they're not just good for Fido.
Exactly. Stepping away from the computer, getting some fresh air, maybe even chatting with a colleague while you're out those little breaks can do wonders.
They're good for us too.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Totally. But okay, let's be real for a sec.
Yeah.
Not every company can just become a dog park overnight.
Right.
There are some real challenges to consider.
Absolutely. For one thing, not everyone's a dog person, and we need to respect that.
100%. Allergies, fear of dogs, even just personal preference. We got to make sure everyone feels comfortable.
Exactly. And even if you are a dog lover, let's be honest, not every dog is cut out for office life.
True. Some dogs would be totally stressed out in that environment.
Right.
And then there are the practical things to think about, noise levels, office layout, having clear pet policies in place.
Yeah, that's a big one. The podcast really emphasized the importance of having those guidelines.
It's essential. designated dog zones, leash rules, maybe even a little office etiquette refresher for the pups.
Right. Like no barking at the mail carrier.
Exactly. Basic commands, things like that.
It's all about finding that balance, right? Making it work for everyone.
Exactly. Two-legged and four-legged team members.
Okay, so let's say a company's thinking about giving this whole pet-friendly thing a try. Where do they even begin?
Well, I think communication is key.
Makes sense.
Before you roll out the red carpet for the furry friends, get input from everyone in the workplace.
Good point.
Send out surveys, hold team discussions, maybe even have a meet and greet with some well-behaved pups.
I love that. A little canine meet and greet.
Right. Get everyone acquainted.
So it's not about going from 0 to 60 overnight.
Exactly. Start small, see how it goes, and adjust as needed.
Maybe start with designated dog days or something like that.
Exactly. Dip your toe in the water before you dive headfirst into the dog park.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So after diving deep into this topic, what's the final word? Are dogs the secret to a happier, more productive workplace?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I'd say dogs definitely have the potential to make a positive impact.
Okay.
They can boost morale, create connections, even encourage a healthier work-life balance. But it's not a magic solution, and it's definitely not one size fits all.
True.
It takes careful planning, open communication, and a real commitment to making it work for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for those of you out there thinking about creating a more pet-friendly workplace, we'll leave you with this. As you're navigating this whole thing, think about the big picture. How might this new policy shape your company culture in the long run? It's something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this tail-wagging